Is related to TADA at the moment. He's the president of the Single Fathers Association. Of course, as we mentioned, he's also involved with the used car dealers. But here he's talking about family-related matters, single fathers, and we are going to be joined in a short while on Skype as well by United States Attorney Joel Zuckerman via Skype, as I mentioned, to shed some further details on the plight of a single father from the United States who's fighting to get rights and access to his children who are now, from what we understand, illegally in Trinidad and Tobago. The matter was highlighted on the U.S. news websites and television, and they are now calling on the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, Faris Al-Rawi, to intervene. As I said, before we talk to Mr. Zuckerman, let's say good morning to Randall. Good morning, Randall. Good to have you here with us. Before we talk with the attorney on behalf of his client, just give us a synopsis of what is the situation here.
I mean, this whole issue revolves around an issue that we've been having a while, where children have been here talking about it before. Children are being moved from one jurisdiction to another. I mean, instances of children being removed from the U.S. unlawfully, brought to Trinidad and Tobago, children being removed from Trinidad and Tobago and unlawfully carried to other parts of the region, mainly parts that are not signed or not signatories on the Hague Convention. I've had a number of fathers that have come to me. They have the passports in their hands for their children, and their children are gone. They go to the embassies, the local embassies for the country, and they're given a document called an emergency travel certificate, and these children are taken away. And over almost a year now, we've written to the AG, we've written to the National Security Minister. We held a protest telling them to put measures in place to protect children from this kind of action. And I knew this would happen eventually because we did not put the measures in place. I asked for audience with the Attorney General. I asked for audience with the Minister of National Security. I did see his advisor on the issue who took up strongly the issue, but we didn't hear anything from them for months again. And this is what brought us here. And now the United States senators and congressmen are sending letters to our embassy in the United States. There are allegations of collusion in the embassy. I'm pretty sure Mr. Zuckerman will highlight those things that the U.S. State Department mentioned. And it's very embarrassing for Trinidad and Tobagonians, I think.
Well, let's bring in Mr. Zuckerman here. He's the attorney representing the client who is affected by this situation, the father, the United States citizen who now doesn't have access to his children. Mr. Zuckerman, good morning once again. And for our viewers in Trinidad and Tobago, our listeners as well, wherever they may be following our program, if you could just give us a synopsis of the situation as you understand it on behalf of your client.
Okay. My client's children, he was married to a Trinidadian national in Maryland. It's probably around 2008. They had two children, and in 2010, his wife filed for divorce. And at a hearing in February of 2010, a court entered an order that said that the children shall not leave the country, and barred both parents from removing the children from the country. And the lawyer for the wife was present at the hearing and spoke to his client and told the judge that his client was not going to leave the country, that she was simply visiting relatives out of state, and that she would be back in Maryland for a hearing in a few weeks. Well, at the time that he made those representations to the court, his client had already secured emergency travel documents from the Trinidadian embassy so that she could leave the country with the children. She already had her plane tickets, and within hours of the court entering that order, based upon the lawyer's promises that the wife would not leave the country, she was on a plane and back to Trinidad, and she arrived the morning of February 27th. The order was entered on February 26th, so she clearly was in violation of the order. She landed in Trinidad on February 27th, the morning of February 27th, and has not been back to the United States since. And my client's children have been in Trinidad since that time. And based upon the investigation of the State Department, and they were looking into this matter on behalf of my client, their investigation revealed that the emergency travel documents were issued without proper authorization, without contacting my client to find out whether or not he consented to the children traveling at the time, and without making some very simple inquiries that could have been made to find out whether or not these parties were the subject of a court matter, which is evident on the internet through our courts database in the state of Maryland. And it's very, very simple for somebody to find that information if they are so inclined. And the Trinidadian embassy or the employee who was working there simply failed to do that. And our State Department, in their investigation, revealed that they believe, if I read directly from the page, from an email back in March of 2010, states, in this day and age of well-publicized abductions in the media, it is surprising that the airlines would collude with this, as well as the TT consulate in New York City. So when Mr. Fields is talking about a problem that is currently going on in Trinidad, it has been going on for several years. And what we would ask is that an investigation be done to find out who was the employee that authorized these travel documents to be issued.
Hold on a moment there, Mrs. Zuckerman, as we'll continue with your perspective on the situation. So, Rondell Fields, you talked about the fact that Trinidad and Tobago faces significant embarrassment from this situation, but beyond that, is anything happening in the legal framework of things to rectify the situation, as we've just heard from Mr. Zuckerman?
And that's it, nothing's taking place, and that's the issue that we're having. I mean, there are so many suggestions that we've made. There's, in the United States, the Goldman Act, where the AG needs, or the State Department gets involved, make sure that the other signatories to the Hague Convention, that they are compliant with the Hague Convention. They also intervene in instances when other nations aren't signed on to the Hague Convention as well, to assist with getting the children back. And I think it's time for legislation to assist the Hague Convention. I think that the AG, I think that Parliament needs to look at this. Parental kidnapping is a very serious issue throughout the entire world. And I think we need to show more concern. That is the issue here. We aren't showing concern. This is something that we highlighted, I'm talking about nearly a year ago. I mean, not only with children, as I said, coming into Trinidad and Tobago, there are many men or fathers and even mothers. I didn't make this about fathers alone.
Yes.
There are many parents here that have the child's passport in their possession, and the children have been whisked away. So possibly this is something that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs needs to take up with the embassies. We need to have some definition or clarity on what is required for issuance of such a document. I also, at the time, a year ago, I showed grave concern. I said, if there's alleged collusion and these things flying around, there are people speaking about these things on the airwaves, we need to be careful, because human trafficking is a very big issue as well. We don't want no collusion taking place at any embassy and people's children are being kidnapped and whisked away to other nations. We may laugh at it now, it may seem laughable now until it actually happens. And you know how sometimes we are reactive in Trinidad and Tobago. At that point, then we want to form a new task force. We want to now look for suggestions, when right now we can't do something about this. Right now, the AG is aware of these issues. I've written to him since 2015. The Minister of National Security, Foreign Affairs. We've had a protest about these issues of children coming into our country, of our Trinidadian children being taken out of our country, and we just can't find them. And I don't understand how we truly want to protect children, and this isn't a relevant issue in Parliament right now.
Mrs. Zuckerman, if I could bring you back into the discussion, what course of action is available to you legally on behalf of your client, given the situation?
Well, where we are right now is my client's wife has been indicted by a prosecutor in the county where the family lived, and a prosecutor in Maryland has asked the grand jury to indict the wife on felony child abduction charges. The indictment was returned, and the wife has been charged with 6 counts of felony child abduction. And the 6 counts stem from the fact that each time my client asked for the children, now it was more than 3 times for each child, but they found that there were specifically 3 instances that fit the definition that the grand jury believed that this woman committed the crime of felony child abduction. And the Baltimore County prosecutor, Maryland prosecutor, requested from the Department of Justice that they send an extradition request to Trinidad and Tobago. And after a year of carefully examining the issue, the Department of Justice of the United States agreed with the Baltimore County prosecutor and and said that this was an appropriate case for extradition, and they have forwarded, from the information that we have, the extradition request directly to the Attorney General. And at this time, all we know is that it is sitting on the Attorney General's desk. We have had congressmen, as Mr. Fields indicated. There has been a congressman that wrote a letter to the Embassy of Trinidad and Tobago in Washington, D.C. There has been a U.S. Senator on behalf of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which is comprised of 18 United States senators, asking that the extradition process proceeds swiftly so that the mother can face justice in the United States. And at this time, from all we know, it is simply sitting on the desk, and we would ask the Attorney General, Mr. Al Rawi of Trinidad and Tobago, to move on this matter and to begin the extradition process so that this mother can stand trial in the United States for the crimes that she is alleged to have been committed. And the reason why it's important that she stands trial, and this goes back to what Mr. Fields is saying, is that when someone is prosecuted for a crime, it serves as a deterrent. Not only is the person going to be punished if they're found guilty, but it serves as a deterrent to others who may seek to do the same thing. So long as this sits on Mr. Al-Rawi's desk and collecting dust, and the process is not moving forward, more and more children are in danger.
Mr. Zappan, sorry, I have to interrupt you because time is going by very quickly, but we get the gist of your contribution. Thanks very much for taking the time to give us your perspective. Very quickly, Rondell Fields, we have about a minute left before we go to the news. What further pressure, if there is any, that can be put on the Attorney General to respond?
I mean, more pressure than this, I don't think it's really necessary. I think this is worthy of a response. You have a letter written from a U.S. congressman, a letter written by a U.S. senator. We've written a letter. And I mean, our issue doesn't only deal with Mr. Zuckerman's
crime. Our issue is generally
a broader issue to protect our children more so than anything else, protect our Trinidadian children, put things in place. I think it's time now that the AG answers, he responds. I mean, this has gone. CBS made a big mass coverage of this last night. I think it's time for him to respond, and they're waiting for a response from him from the United States of America.
Rondell Fields, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Always forthright and certainly very emotional at times as well when it comes to these issues related to children, as the head of the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. But at the end of the day, it comes down to law, and is the Attorney General delinquent in his responsibilities and at least responding to this order that is coming from the authorities in the United States, and more specifically the District of Maryland. Coming up towards the news at the top of the hour, then we move into the second hour of Morning Edition on this Thursday.